The 5th generation Wahoo Kickr with its ecosystem, or the Tacx Neo 2T. Which one is best? Keep watching to find out. So welcome to what will be a new series of videos on our YouTube channel, which we're calling Head to Head. As the name suggests, we're going to be pitching key products in a sector directly against each other in a head-to-head battle to see which one runs out as winner. So today we're looking at direct drive smart trainers. We've got the 5th generation Wahoo Kickr with its ecosystem and the Tacx Neo 2T, two champions of this category, that is undeniable. So before we delve into all the nitty-gritty of the trainers actually in use, let's look at some basic comparisons to start with. So price, first and foremost, something that everyone's going to be interested in. The 5th generation of the Wahoo Kickr is £999 for the standalone smart trainer. If you want the fully interactive and immersive experience offered by the Kickr Climb and the Kickr Headwind, however, then you'll be looking at another £199 and £449 additionally. So setup cost of about £1,650 for the Kickr ecosystem. That's compared to £1,199 for the Tacx Neo 2T. Other dimensions that we might want to consider would be weight. They both run in, to be honest, quite similar, about 21.7, 21.8 kilos, so not much in it there. And in terms of size, they both fold down and are both quite compact to be easily stored away in a corner of a room or in a cupboard. Both of these are plus or minus 1% power accuracy, so absolutely at the top of their game. That's as good as it gets in the current market. Maximum wattage capabilities in terms of what they can replicate, up to 2,200 watts for both of them. So again, no trouble there. That's good enough for even the best sprinters on the planet. In terms of gradient simulation, the Wahoo Kickr will do up 20% incline and a 10% descent with the Kickr Climb accessory. The Neo 2T will be able to replicate up to 25% inclines. I think most people would agree that a practical and user-friendly setup is a really important part of a smart trainer. You don't want to be faffing around and having really complicated things to do in order to get it set up for your bike. I think both of these trainers do a really good job in terms of the speed which you're able to get set up straight out of the box. But I think there's some important things that the Wahoo does very well which are worth mentioning. It comes with an 11-speed cassette in the box, so that's a plus point to start with. I understand why Tacx have decided not to provide a cassette with the Neo 2T, obviously because you can't cover all bases, but I think at least providing that 11-speed setup there with the Wahoo Kickr does give you, it covers the majority of the bell curve, I think, in the current market, so that's a good thing. All of the necessary axle standards are covered on both models with simple, press-in or screw-in adapters. Really not complicated to adapt this to be compatible with through axles, standard quick release, or even mountain bike systems. Adjustment on the Wahoo is really good for leveling. You've got the ability to wind the feet in and out for height adjustment individually, which means that it copes really well on an uneven surface. And that's something that I would say Tacx has missed a trick on with the Neo 2T. There is no adjustment on the feet for this. So really, if you're not on a perfectly level surface, then you're kind of left with, well, what do? You're kind of folding a beer mat and wedging it under one corner, a bit like a wobbly table in a restaurant. So that's not ideal. The other thing that the Wahoo does really nicely, or I really prefer about the design, is that the axle height is the same at the rear as it would be with a normal 700C front wheel. So you don't need to use a riser block. Tacx has chosen to supply a riser block, which, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's not a deal breaker by any means, but personally, I just like the fact that you don't need to use it on the Kickr. It just keeps things nice and simple. So basic number comparisons aside, time to delve into the nitty-gritty and discuss what these two trainers are actually like to ride. Now, first and foremost, when you jump on, both of these have a really neat feature, which is auto calibration. And that means that there's nothing you need to do in terms of spin down tests or anything like that in order to ensure their accuracy. The other thing you're going to notice immediately is the amount of noise, or lack of noise, I should say, because both of these trainers are incredibly quiet. I did some maximal tests using my own decibel meter on a smartphone app just to see how loud they were, and on maximal testing, sprinting sort of efforts, they both came in under 70 decibels. That's pretty impressive. I mean, to give that some context, that's about the sort of noise level of a standard adult conversation. So yeah, neither of these are going to present any problems in that regard. Onto the main feature of a smart trainer then, and that is realism. Now, I'm going to break this down into a couple of different subsections because really, first and foremost, we can look at the smoothness aspect of the realism. How does it sort of feel relative to what a bike feels to ride in a real world scenario? Now, both of these trainers, I have to say, are exemplary in this regard, but they go about it in a slightly different way. The Wahoo Kickr uses an external flywheel, 7.3 kilograms. That's a very heavyweight flywheel, and that really helps in that smoothness and real world feel. Delivers a drivetrain that, just keeps up with your pedaling nicely and reacts quickly to changes in intensity and so on. Tacx goes about solving that problem in a different way, so no external flywheel on the Neo 2T. This uses an internal virtual flywheel, they call it, which is made up of neodymium magnets, and that actually creates an exceptionally smooth riding feel. I would say, hand on heart, the Neo 2T is the smoothest of all of the direct drive smart trainers I've ever tested. That virtual flywheel also reacts really quickly to those changes in pace and intensity. So particularly if you're doing maximal load on-off style intervals with those sprint efforts, I think the virtual flywheel in the Neo 2T is brilliant at coping with that. And definitely in this latest version, they've really worked on that as a key feature to deliver that accuracy and reactivity to your intensity levels. Finally then, I would say, in that realism category, we're looking at the immersive experience. And both of these, again, have ways to go above and beyond sort of the normal turbo trainer environment. Particularly the Wahoo Kickr, obviously, we're looking at it as an ecosystem with the Kickr Climb and the Kickr Headwind. So if you're looking for a truly immersive ride experience indoors, I think this is kind of second to none in that regard. With the bike mounted front and rear, it will pitch the bike up for the climbs, down for the descents. The headwind fan will blow stronger as your speed increases. So yeah, realistically, I mean, it is giving you that sense of just being totally immersed in your riding experience, as if, as close as possible to being in the outdoor world. Obviously, the Tacx doesn't have any of that elevation of the bike at the front, but what it does have is another trick up its sleeve. Tacx for the Neo 2T has built into it the ability to mimic ground surface changes. So that's quite a neat little feature. So if you are in your third-party training app, Zwift for instance, when you ride onto cobblestones or gravel sections, all that sort of sensation is delivered through the drivetrain of the bike. It's very difficult to show in a video. It's something you can only really feel, but yeah, trust me, it's there and it's actually pretty good. While we're talking about realism of the ride feel, something that both of them do actually, especially now in this 5th generation, Wahoo has added the Axis feet to the Kickr, which, these softer rubber feet, which have a way of adjusting how much movement they offer, will allow the bike to move just beneath you in a sort of very natural way. A bike is never held rigidly in upright position in a real world scenario, so it's great to have that now as a feature of the Kickr. But I think the Tacx, which also has that feature built into it, the unit itself will just flex and allow the bike to move 5 degrees in either direction. That too, it provides a really natural feel as you change from riding in the saddle to out of the saddle, for instance. It just feels really natural, the bike able to move beneath you. I guess someone could argue that all of those features were, potentially a bit unnecessary, a bit gimmicky even. But I would say, embrace them. I mean, they're there to just, as I said, immerse yourself in that training environment. And I think that, they should be appreciated. In terms of reliability, over a pretty extensive period of testing on both of these trainers, I've had literally no trouble with either of them. I found them very easy to update to firmware and things like that via the app. Both very self-explanatory in that regard. The only thing I would say is just on very rare occasions, I experienced a couple of connectivity dropouts with the Tacx Neo 2T. So yeah, that's frustrating if you're in the middle of a training session or whatever. Never experienced anything like that on the Kickr. Just a small thing, but worthy of mention nonetheless. Okay, so that's a heap of information to take in, but what does that mean in our test? Head to head, which one of these smart trainers do I think is best? Well, I don't really think it's fair to actually make that call, because when I look at the pros and cons of both of these, what are effectively champions of this category, I think realistically, the winner is which one suits your situation best. And by that I mean, for instance, if you really want to go all in on that immersive experience, then for sure the Kickr is going to give you the sort of best case scenario in that regard. But bear in mind then, you've got a lot of extra setup time involved in order to get the bike mounted and pair up the various pieces of equipment and so on. Unless, of course, you're lucky enough to have a training environment where you can leave it set up all the time. And that's kind of what I mean in terms of, making a decision based on your own personal circumstances. What I found throughout the course of my testing is I would say that I'd probably defaulted more to the Neo 2T, purely from the fact that it's so simple to just stick the bike on and get training and go. It's not necessarily fair to say one is better than the other. I would say they're both class-leading products. Just make that decision based on which features mean the most to you and your particular requirements. If you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, please do give us a like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're after more cycling related content, head over to cyclist.co.uk for all the latest news, tech and in-depth product and bike reviews.